Prepare to discard your mental blinders. CounterThink with Mike Adams, live on Infowars.com.
Welcome to CounterThink. This is Mike Adams. We've got a very important broadcast for you today. Highlights from the new film, Biosludged, which talks about the EPA corruption of science and the mass pollution of our world with toxic sewage sludge produced by the cities all across America and then dumped on farmlands, croplands, and even city parks. I mean, food crops are receiving this toxic sewage sludge, and it's all been approved by the EPA. It's all done with fraudulent science. It is an extraordinary crime against humanity and a crime against the environment, and we've got the feature film. I'm the producer of the film. It's edited by Thomas Burke, who was also a co-producer on the film. We've got an amazing lineup of guests and experts and science whistleblowers, former EPA scientist Dr. David Lewis. In fact, this film is so powerful, it's going to make so many waves that they will try to censor it in every way possible, which is why we created our own video site. Really, before we launched the film, we held the film back so that we could launch the video site, brighteon.com. That's brighteon.com. And the new division is brighteonfilms.com that has launched this movie. So you can watch the full film right now for free. Doesn't cost you anything. Just go to biosludged.com. That's biosludged.com. Or you can even see it on brighteon.com as well. Now, in this opening segment here, I'm going to play for you the opening of the film, because it's a hard-hitting compilation of amazing information. So check it out now, and after that intro, I'll be back to segue into the next segment here. Check it out. This is Biosludged, the introduction. Here we go. Everyone that I've talked to about this issue had never heard of it, and it is the greatest environmental crime in America.
Well, the Capital Regional District has rejected a proposal to reconsider sewage treatment. Oak Bay Council is leading the charge for an independent environmental assessment to compare the benefits of treating sewage to leaving it untreated as it is now.
This is where biosolids are being produced. Everywhere across America, everywhere that a toilet flushes, everywhere that sewage lines converge in a city, they have a biosolids problem and they have to get rid of it.
Raw sewage, finding a way to make it a little more useful for local farms by creating fertilizer.
But the question is this change safe and sanitary?
When Tom Estabrook is gardening, he's not thinking about what's in the soil.
I don't worry about that whatsoever.
Remember, everything you flush down the toilet goes into these biosolids. If you wouldn't put it in your own garden, don't flush it down the toilet.
Many of you may or may not know, but EPA regulates under our environmental statutes like the Clean Water Act, like the Clean Air Act.
But there's no Clean Soil Act, which means that the government has said we can mass pollute the soil and call it legal and call it green and call it recycling. So we now have government legalized pollution, and it's been legalized by the EPA, which I would say, in my opinion, is a highly corrupt organization that needs to be radically reformed to actually protect the environment like they used to do back in the 1970s. The EPA and we, as a country, have inadvertently created really a devastating vector for bioterrorism of ourselves. Biosludge always contains one chemical, we found. There's one chemical that's a marker for it. It's Benadryl, the over-the-counter drug. Our ecosystem is in the crosshairs of this biosludge industry. They're making money while poisoning the planet with toxins that persist in the environment.
This issue is so much larger than at first.
All right, interrupting the film right now. We got to go to break. This is Mike Adams, CounterThink. You're listening to excerpts from the new film, Biosludged. We'll be right back after this break with more from the feature film. Stay with us here on CounterThink.
Warning, Take the red pill before viewing. CounterThink with Mike Adams.
Welcome back to CounterThink with Mike Adams. We're bringing you highlights today from the new feature film Biosludged, which exposes the fake science, the fraudulent science that's been carried out by the EPA and the corrupt government under the Bush administration, under the Obama administration, and it's continuing under the Trump administration because the EPA is a corrupt, fake science, criminal organization. Really, if you think about it, they should be called the Environmental Pollution Agency. They're harming our world, polluting our food, and they're causing all the diseases that we're seeing now, these mysterious diseases that are affecting children in 31 states. Where do you think that came from? The CDC's covering it up. But in this segment, I got to bring you this, the highlights about the fake science, and even some words from a former whistleblower who used to be an EPA scientist. Well, he's a present-day whistleblower, former EPA scientist, Dr. David Lewis, author of the book Science for Sale, an eye-opening book, an amazing book. You got to see this segment. Listen to Dr. David Lewis talk about the scientific fraud inside the EPA, which continues its science fraud to this day by pushing the climate change hoax. Check it out. We have to be on our game. Anybody makes any claim to you that something's eco-friendly or all natural or even organic in this case, all those things are in essence false for this product, and yet these claims are very, very widespread. So I began to look at it. I found a book called Science for Sale by Dr. David Lewis, and I highly recommend this book. And Dr. Lewis saw his career destroyed by the EPA.
We're going to protect the family farm, and we are going to end the EPA intrusion into your lives.
A lot of people would blame President Trump for our problems today with the EPA. EPA was created by, I believe, Nixon during his administration. And like any government bureaucracy, over time it has been corrupted and more corrupted. And now you see it controlled by parts of it by industry. The sewage industry is one. They're controlling the biosolids through lobbying, through money. It will be hard to take that down.
Increasingly, from what I've observed, the EPA is almost more like a cheerleader for the industries that really are, at this point, causing vast contamination of the biosphere. When recently Monsanto was allowed to petition the EPA to increase the exposure limits for Roundup, it was clear at that time that this was really a horrific decision due to the fact that we know now Roundup can actually act as a carcinogenic endocrine disruptor in the parts per trillion range.
The EPA is not what it used to be. I believe it was at least created for all the right reasons. At least I'd like to believe that. The reason for bringing EPA to life was to really protect the environment. But what EPA is doing right now, it's far from the environment and far from protection. I think people like David Lewis, who was at some point EPA senior staff scientist and who now are outspoken, independent scientific voices out there, can again have a say in how EPA functions.
I worked at EPA for 32 years. Beginning in 1970, when EPA was created, EPA was a good agency, had good intentions, good scientists. That changed in 1993. There was a mass exodus of EPA scientists at that time. So the scientists that remain at EPA today is a different culture than when EPA was created. I am speaking out because science was everything to me, and science is all about the truth. My life was dedicated to it. Once science at EPA was no longer about the truth, but it was about supporting certain industry practices and certain government policies, I wanted no part of it. But rather than walking out the door like many of EPA's scientists did when that happened. I decided to stay in. I filed a series of whistleblower lawsuits to get discovery documents. I wanted to understand how this happened, and I felt like I could do more for science to tell this story than I could in a laboratory producing data that would never see the light of day anyway. In the federal government, when data are fabricated, they can get away with anything in the way of fraud, covering up adverse health effects, faking data. The individual at EPA who came up with EPA's sludge policies, Henry Longus, in the mid-1970s, and was still protecting biosolids with fake data. When I left EPA in 2003, he received multiple presidential awards in the Rose Garden by President Bush, even though it was known all of the fraudulent activities he was involved with. They are immune to prosecution, but let any scientist try faking data for his own personal gain, they don't last any time. They will be fired and put in prison. But fake data for the government in its interest, in the industry's interest, and you will be promoted and protected at the highest levels.
One of the very confusing aspects of this whole business of land-disposed toxic sewage sludge is based on the question, how can this be legal? If it is known to be so toxic, it is known to be the inciting agent of so many chronic and acute diseases, infectious diseases, cancer, neurological disorders, well, it has to do with the U.S. Environmental Protection Agency. Years ago, they conferred the decisions on regulation and use of sewage sludge to the states. And the state departments of ecology or the state departments of environmental quality then had the right and the freedom to relax the regulations and adopt some EPA standards for concentrations of toxic or to apply their own regulations. State agencies tend to be cooperative, so the State Department of Ecology in Washington State, as one example, collaborates very nicely with the State Department of Agriculture. And state departments of agriculture like to help farmers, and one way they help them is to figure strategy for reducing costs of farming, including the costs of fertilizers. Counties, on the other hand, and municipalities have an enormous burden of what to do with all the sewage sludge. Nearly every municipality has a wastewater treatment plant. All of the sewage sludge is toxic. Wastewater treatment plants, as I say, do not treat wastewater. They separate it into the solids and the water with the intent of recycling the water and beneficially recycling the solids. The problem is that the standards and the testing of the solids, what we refer to as toxic sewage sludge, are so low and so minimal that all of these flame retardants, pesticides, industrial chemicals, infectious agents from medical facilities and just from the general public, as well as from agricultural operations, all end up right back into our food supply and the environment.
Rightly or wrongly, politicians are more concerned about their retirement and getting reelected. So it's, don't come in here and make waves. We have everything under control, and I have to worry about my retirement. You hear that so often with municipal workers. You know, I'm not interested in you making any waves. I'm not interested in saving a buck because it's not my money, it's somebody else's money. And I don't want to have to, you know, run the risk of maybe it not working, and then I look bad and somehow.
All right, so that's some of the fake science that you'll see exposed in this film, Biosludged. Be sure to check it out for free. You can watch the whole thing, no charge, at biosludged.com or brighteon.com. We'll be right back after this break with more here. This is Mike Adams on CounterThink.
countering the brain-dead propaganda of the status quo. This is CounterThink with Mike Adams, right here on InfoWars.
And welcome back to CounterThink with Mike Adams. We are watching highlights, segments, the hardest hitting segments from the new feature film, Biosludged. And in this upcoming segment that will blow your mind, we're talking about bioterrorism and how biosludge, the practices that are used by cities all across America and approved by the EPA, are in fact a form of domestic terrorism that could ultimately harm or even kill millions of people across America. Let's go right to that segment, and I'll be back on the other side. That food is polluted, contaminated food, but they don't tell you that on the bag, do they? They just have a happy image and happy claims, and they say, no problem, use it almost everywhere.
The E. coli, there's 157 different serotypes of E. coli in somebody's gut. So there is the potential, for example, the serotype of E. coli I have in my gut, probably my family has the same serotype. There's only one chance in 157 that the E. coli in your gut is the same in mine. So you could actually, your E. coli would make me very sick. So, but there's 156 chances out of 157 that I'm going to get sick if I get contaminated with your E. coli. All 157 varieties are in biosolids. And that's the problem. In the bioterrorism paper that I wrote, that is a serious concern, because now someone can go and take that, and it's not DNA traceable. It's as simple as going out to the field that you throw biosolids out, putting it in an 8-ounce jar, adding a little fluid, a little water to it, putting it in a spray bottle, going across the U.S. and spray it on salad bars as you go from town to town. 4.5 million people could be infected within 2 weeks. That's the reality. People can argue that, but they won't survive the argument.
The subject of bioterrorism has been brought up, and if you consider Dallas, Texas, when it was tasked with Ebola, and the way Ebola works is it causes dehydration in the victim and in the form of diarrhea and also vomiting. And you got to think about where that went. It went into the sewer system. It went down the sewer system and ended up in biosolids. And in fact, the CDC had special sessions with sewage industry to talk about that. And they were closed-door sessions. So I don't know what was said, but they had a concern. The same thing could be talked about bioterrorism, where a terrorist pulls into a hotel and flushes whatever down the toilet and contaminates, and then the sewage industry disperses for them.
Yeah, I don't think their intention is terrorism, but you know, it doesn't matter what their intention. The intentions are profit, I believe. But what they are doing out of ignorance and greed is basically a form of domestic terrorism, when unknowingly or unwillingly they spread the myriad of pathogens and toxins that cannot be eliminated from the natural environment, and the general public, people that they don't have a recourse to protect themselves from it, and they are not aware what they're being exposed to, suffer the consequences. And yeah, it is a form of an environmental crime that is being committed.
It is possible to create resistant strains by plan and intent to use as a weapon in biological warfare. The intent of that kind of behavior is to cause primary infections in people who may be consuming the food or water. The secondary, unexpected, but appreciated consequences of this activity is that all of the victims of this first biobomb bearer are the people who get exposed to the sewage sludge and the wastewater effluent, where all of these people discarded their own waste. So this is a problem that multiplies itself in our living environment. All it takes is one person in one city to create a tremendous infectious disease event that can be extremely costly. It's costly to the healthcare system, but also there are enormous economic costs because people who are infected are taken out of the workforce. So you have more than just the infected individual. You have a healthcare system that's compromised, and you have extraordinary economic impacts.
After 9/11, I was put on EPA's short list of bioterrorism experts to contact in case of a bioterrorism attack on the United States. I submitted a report to EPA that my concerns was over land application of biosolids, because anyone can walk up to a sewage treatment plant, access a sewer line, and put tons of material in it that would never be detected, that would go to the sewage treatment plant, go out onto farms and contaminate our land. This is an open door, an open invitation to bioterrorism. EPA lacks regulations on sewage sludge. They'll go right, any toxic chemical that a bioterrorist could want to use can be added to a sewer, go through the plant, be spread out in the surrounding city and countryside, courtesy of the municipal government. Nobody will know it until people start dropping dead.
When you dump these toxins into an ecosystem, you got to understand that that ecosystem is full of living animals that will then spread those toxins. So you've got birds, you've got ground animals such as squirrels, and you have insects, flies, just common flies, for example, that are attracted to this waste product, and then they spread it. Even moths can spread it. And these toxins then contain viral strains and bacterial strains and fungi. And this then gets spread out like an expanding biological weapon system. It's almost as if dumping biosludge in a forest or in any kind of natural area is a kind of ecological terrorism. If you were a terrorist organization and you wanted to harm the ecosystem and wipe out life in a forest, for example, you would try to find a substance like this that's full of thousands of potential poisonous toxic chemicals, and you would dump that and you would see life destroyed. Well, cities are doing that. They don't call themselves terrorists, but the outcome is still the same. It's ecological devastation. This is the extermination of life and the disruption of natural food webs and ecosystem interdependencies. And this is being done in the name of eco-friendly, sustainable, organic fertilizer. That's what's most astonishing about this. Here we have the absolute destruction of ecology, the destruction of life, the mass poisoning of our world in the name of being green. Wow, what a powerful segment. We'll be right back after this break with more from Biosludged, the new feature film you can watch for free right now at brighteon.com. This is Mike Adams on CounterThink. We'll be right back after this break.
Exposing the corporate media assaults on your reality. It's CounterThink with Mike Adams.
Did you know that your food is heavily contaminated, almost to the point of it being domestic terrorism? The food supply is polluted with this biosludge practice that concentrates the toxic sewage sludge from the cities all across America and then redistributes that as, quote, fertilizer on food crops all across America in the rural areas. So we're taking the poison from the cities and dumping it on rural America. Basically, you're taking the pro-Hillary poop. I mean, this is actual sewage we're talking about here. It's pro-Hillary poop, and you're spreading it on Trump's America. This is actually what's happening. It's not even a metaphor. It's actually what's happening. I'm trying to tone it down without using profanity. This practice is toxic. It is an environmental crime, and it's contaminating your food. And I'm going to bring you some more segments here from the film Biosludged that talk about this and how disgusting it is and how criminal it has become. So watch these segments. I'll be back after these segments with a few more comments. But watch now. It's biosludged.com is where you can see the film for free.
I think one of the biggest issues with biosludge is that when we really look at our definitions of species today, we are primarily microbial as far as the genetic contribution alone. So microbes, fungi, bacteria. And those microbes come largely from the food we consume and ultimately the soil that it's grown in. So when you're using biosludge to produce the food that then becomes the basis for our microbiome and our species definition, this issue is so much larger than at first it would appear. It's not just about toxicant exposure, it's actually about the very root of our species definition being completely undermined, and ultimately the trajectory is towards the degeneration of our species if we continue using this as a soil amendment.
When I first started researching sewage sludge or biosolids, I went after the pathogen question. And there are probably, a couple of dozen pathogens, in sewage sludge. I found that the chemicals in sewage sludge is something that the sewage community does not want to talk about. In fact, they refer to it as contaminants. When I researched that, I came across an EPA document called the Targeted National Survey of Sewage Sludge, and the last one released was in 2009, and it listed hundreds of chemicals in sewage sludge. Further research showed that sewage sludge contains over 80,000 chemicals, and that's because the EPA made a rule that requires all industry to dump their industrial chemicals in sewage, into the sewer system. So what the farmer's getting that doesn't even have a clue about are all these chemicals, and nobody can answer the question what degree of hazard, what concentrations of chemicals are in biosolids.
About 90,000 chemicals in commerce today have already been discharged into soils and water and so forth. And every year there's 1,000 new synthetic chemicals. And of course EPA keeps telling us it's nutrient rich. This is a myth. I mean, yes, there are nutrients in there. There's nitrogen in there. But with this ability of industries able to discharge all their chemicals and into the waste stream, you have an unbelievably toxic containing material.
This study that Ottawa U pointed out is a much better way of assessing sewage sludge contamination because it's a bacteria that survives virtually untouched through the anaerobic digestion process and that actually swims. Whereas the other bacteria, like the E. coli, they're only on the actual sewage itself, on the particles. But this stuff swims, it lives, and it's almost, they said it's really restricted to sewage, like it comes from our colons in our bodies. And so they recommended that it be used as the indicator. Well, of course, that study was just disappeared. Nobody's commented on it or done anything about it.
Let's take a look at biosludge under the microscope. So we've got a digital microscope here, and we've got some mill organite on a white tissue, and we're going to zoom in and start to take a look at what we can see. Now you can see the structure of the pebbles, which look like boulders under here, but as we zoom in more, you start to see features of mysterious fibers that don't necessarily look like plant fibers. Many of them start to look synthetic as you really zoom in on it, and you can start to see that there are some very odd looking elements in this picture. What is this growth or structure there? What is this fiber? What are these chunks? And you can actually start to maneuver around the scene using this microscope setup. We're looking at essentially a dehydrated, pelletized form of human sewage. And it should be no surprise that it's full of all kinds of questionable and disgusting things. And throughout this landscape, you see mysterious fibers. Now we're starting to see more details about this structure. What is this yellow object that's lodged here inside the turd boulder? What does this look like? Microplastics. This is a kind of pollution, a kind of contamination that's in the oceans, and it appears to be here in the biosludge as well, connected to these other fibers. It's clearly a polymer, or resembles one, and we have all these other fibers and strands that are in this biosolid product. It looks pretty creepy. Is this something that you want on your food? We zoom in here. Here's another, it looks like a polymer of some sort, mixed in with everything else and all these bizarre fibers. And whatever this mass is here that has glommed on to this turd boulder, you know, this is what you're putting on your garden, people. This is what's going on your food. First, notice that Milorganite from Milwaukee says it's eco-friendly. This is one of the big claims. Eco-friendly. So if you take a concentrated form of human sewage, viruses, heavy metals, even industrial waste, all kinds of toxins, and you concentrate them, you can call it eco-friendly, according to Milorganite. In small print, in complete contradiction to the primary claims on this label, they say that this product may cause cancer. This product contains detectable quantities of chemicals known to cause cancer, birth defects, or other reproductive harm, they say. They even say, by the way, do not apply near water, storm drains, or drainage ditches. You know why? Because if it runs off into the rivers and streams and oceans, it kills aquatic life. So they say, don't apply it where it might run off into the water. Instead, they say, apply this product only to your lawn and garden and sweep any product that lands on the driveway, sidewalk, or street back into your own garden to grow the foods that you're feeding your children. Now we get to Dillo Dirt, which comes from Austin, Texas. This is human sewage that people flush down the toilet in Austin. And you see an armadillo with happily carrying a wheelbarrow full of human sewage. They call it Dillo Dirt because they can't call it Austin sewage. Nobody would buy it. Now, in every case, these products... All right, this is Mike Adams back here. There's a lot more of this film that you haven't seen. The full film, you know, it's an hour long. It's a feature film. I don't know how much it cost to produce, but it was a lot. You can see the whole film right now at biosludged.com. There's no charge to see it. You can even burn it to a DVD, share it with your friends. You can even put it on a BitTorrent site, a file sharing site, and share it with others. So check it all out at biosludged.com. We'll be right back after this break with more. You're watching CounterThink with Mike Adams.
Prepare to discard your mental blinders. CounterThink with Mike Adams is now live on Infowars.com.
Yeah, I mentioned in the opening of, or the conclusion of the last segment here, you're watching CounterThink with Mike Adams. Thank you for joining me. You know, you can take this film. This is how we, the independent media, this is how we win. This film that I've just put out after 2 years of effort and getting all these science whistleblowers and analysts and citizen activists and journalists and investigators that exposes the crimes of the EPA, the crimes of the toxic sewage sludge industry. This will be banned on YouTube everywhere. But what I've done is on the biosludge.com webpage, which actually goes to brighteonfilms.com, but there you can download the film files yourself, and you can post those files. You can put it on your own YouTube account if you want. You can post it to Vimeo. You can post it to BitChute. You can post it to Brighteon if you want, although it's already there. You can put it on a BitTorrent website, a file sharing website. You can burn the movie to DVDs and hand them out to your friends. I give you permission to do all that because this is how we get the word out about this crime against all of us. It's a crime against life on our planet. And the institutions in power and the tech giants will try to censor this film every way imaginable. The way we beat them at that game is we use the grassroots, guerrilla distribution networks, which is what we're doing. So grab the files, just go to biosludged.com, and you'll be able to grab the files. Remember, it's Biosludged with an ED on the end. Grab the files. You'll be able to post those files, share those files. In any case, share snippets, put commentary out there about the film if you'd like, but share the files to help keep other people informed, keep them in the loop. In any case, I've got one more set of highlights for you here on the fake environmentalism that now afflicts our world because all these so-called environmentalists, they ignore the real problems with biosludge and they just talk about climate change, which is fiction. It's a total hoax. It's made up. They say that carbon dioxide is a pollutant. No, it's a nutrient for plants. And then they say that biosludge is fertilizer. No, it's toxic sludge. They have it all upside down. They flip the whole thing around. It's incredible what lengths these environmentalists go to twist the truth and try to alter your perception of reality. In reality, your world is being poisoned right now by biosludge. Your farms, your forests, your food, the dinner on your plate, it's being poisoned. Your well water, it's all being poisoned because of biosludge. So watch this segment. I'll be back to wrap up the show. Check it out.
In this modern era, we would expect environmental firms and environmental organizations and environmentally sensitive agencies at all levels of government would be more concerned about human health and environmental health. For some reason, the need for human and environmental health have not caught up with our production of toxic waste. Residents of cities, of intense urban environments, seldom have an awareness of what happens to any of their toxic materials once they flush, once something goes down a drain. Where does it go? What happens to it? What is the fate of those materials? It's not that they are insensitive to environmental issues. It's not that they don't care about human health, but there is a fog over us as a nation that we assume that governments take care of us and that all of this toxic waste disappears out of sight, not to cause further problems. New York City is known as one of the most environmentally sensitive cities in North America, as dense as the population may be. But when you make an inquiry of people in New York about where the sewage goes, they don't know. Many of them do know there are major wastewater treatment plants in New York, and they know that the water gets flushed right into their waterways that surround New York, but the sewage sludge itself is hauled by truck and train points west. Pennsylvania and other states west become the receiving grounds of these thousands, hundreds of thousands of tons of sewage sludge just from New York alone. And it goes on the food crops that go right back to New York, because New York City doesn't really grow any food crops of its own. So they're recycling the toxics right back into their own environmentally sensitive community.
The toxic chemicals that are in sludge now that's been applied to land, most of those are going to still be a problem centuries from now in the soil. The next ice age will come and go, and when the ice recedes, there will still be heavy metals in all these soils. It's unimaginable what we're doing now from the standpoint of how unfixable this is if we let it keep going.
I think the answer to this is pretty simple. I think it's money. And you can make a lot of money on climate change scare, and you can make a lot of money on easy money on distributing the sludge. And if you eliminate that, I think it is profit that drives those eco trends and scaring people into believing that glaciers will melt and we will all drown because the oceans will rise and all that, and because of a human activity. But there is a human activity that actually destroys our environment, and that is applying, for example, applying sludge on agricultural land. And that is not being reported. And that's, maybe I'm simplifying, I probably am simplifying the reason, but I think it's human nature. It's money, it's careers at stake, it's a status quo, maintaining the status quo. We are resistant to change.
What I think, and what has happened around the country, is companies like Synagro, these sewage companies, they will contribute money to these organizations, and and they let them know, and then the organization feels like they owe them a favor.
People are only green until they have to remove money from their wallet. Big companies are the same way. Oh, let's talk about a good PR program here. We are definitely environmentalists. No, it's going to cost you $200 million for you to fix your wetlands problem. Well, we're not that green. I'm not going to spend that. I mean, everybody's green until it impacts them. That's the problem. They have no vision. They're only looking at it from a PR point of view as how does it generate more revenue for me? How does it generate more benefits for me? So making a shit brick and forcing people to buy it doesn't do anything for them.
This is an attack on not just science, it's an attack on humanity. It's an attack on the integrity of the food supply. It's an attack on the sustainability of life on our planet, our ecosystem. All right, so there you go. Some of the most incredible highlights from the film Biosludged. There's a lot more for you to see. Plus, we're posting the full-length interviews. It's over, I think it's like 10 hours, maybe not quite that much. It's at least 7 hours of additional interviews that you can watch for free. Just go to biosludged.com, and you'll be able to click through there to see the full film, as well as the accompanying interviews and much more. It's a lot of great information there. This is our world we're talking about. This is our food. This is our health. They're trying to poison us here. This is how they do it. They poison the countryside, they poison the food crops, and then they call it fertilizer. And they trick the farmers into accepting this toxic sludge on their fields, the fields that grow our food, the food that's fed to your children. It's incredible. So share this episode of CounterThink. Share the movie Biosludged. Watch it yourself. Again, you can burn it to DVD. You can share it on a file sharing website. You can share the URL that we have at brighteon.com. We have a closed caption version of the film for those who are hearing impaired. And you can check that out as well, or share that with people who are hearing impaired. So get the word out. I thank you. And remember, Infowars.com will also carry these broadcasts of CounterThink every Sunday at 6 p.m. Central. Plus, you can find these at CounterThink.com. And if you think that what you heard in today's broadcast was fascinating, wait till you hear what's coming up next week, because I've got a bombshell compilation of how the globalists are now trying to literally terraform the planet, chemtrail the atmosphere to kill off humans by collapsing the global food crops. Not a joke, not an exaggeration. That's exactly what they're trying to do. That's coming up next week on CounterThink. So be sure you don't miss it. This is Mike Adams here for CounterThink. Wow, be safe, get informed, share the movie. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening.